In the town of Kolwezi in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the ground is blue. Not metaphorically. The soil in the mining areas surrounding Kolwezi and across much of the copper belt that runs through the southern DRC into northern Zambia carries visible traces of cobalt, which oxidizes in shades of blue and green that color the earth itself. The geological concentration of cobalt in this region is so extreme that it represents approximately 70% of the world's known cobalt reserves. Almost everything about the global cobalt supply chain, with consequences that extend to the smartphone in your pocket, the electric vehicle parked outside, and the laptop on which this sentence might be read, begins with the soil in the DRC. Cobalt is indispensable to lithium-ion battery technology. It stabilizes the cathode material in the most energy-dense battery chemistries, allowing batteries to hold more charge per unit of weight while maintaining the thermal stability that prevents them from catching fire. The rechargeable battery in a smartphone contains approximately 5 grams of cobalt. The battery pack in an electric vehicle contains approximately 10 kilograms. As the global fleet of electric vehicles has grown from tens of thousands to tens of millions, and as battery storage has expanded from consumer electronics to utility-scale grid applications, the demand for cobalt has accelerated dramatically. The majority of the cobalt that feeds this demand starts its journey in the DRC, under conditions that vary from large-scale industrial mining by multinational corporations to something considerably more irregular. Alongside the large industrial mines operated by Glencore, China Molybdenum, and other multinational companies in the DRC, there exists a parallel mining sector that operates outside the formal regulatory and safety frameworks of the industry. This sector is known as artisanal and small-scale mining, abbreviated in the industry as ASM. It encompasses hundreds of thousands of individual miners. Estimates vary between 200,000 and 500,000, who work independently or in small groups, using hand tools to extract cobalt or from surface deposits, from the walls of informal tunnels, and from the waste rock of formal mine operations. The artisanal mining sector is not, strictly speaking, entirely illegal. Artisanal mining is legally permitted in the DRC under certain frameworks, and some ASM operations work within or adjacent to legal structures. But a significant portion of artisanal cobalt production operates entirely outside regulatory oversight, safety standards, and the due diligence systems that formal mining companies are legally required to maintain. The conditions in many artisanal mines are dangerous in ways that formal mining regulations are specifically designed to prevent. Tunnels are dug without structural support, collapsing on miners without warning. Workers descend into shafts on improvised ropes. Personal protective equipment is absent. Exposure to cobalt dust, which is toxic to the lungs at elevated concentrations, is not controlled. The medical consequences, respiratory disease, neurological effects, and in the case of children working in the mines, developmental impacts, are real and documented. Child labor in artisanal cobalt mining in the DRC has been documented by human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, and by investigative journalists in detail that makes the connection to consumer products uncomfortably precise. The DRC's formal prohibition on child labor in mining is not effectively enforced in the informal sector. Children as young as 7 have been documented carrying and washing cobalt ore. The cobalt extracted through artisanal mining, including by children and in violation of safety regulations, enters the global supply chain through a series of intermediary steps that, historically, have been effective at obscuring its origin. In the DRC, informal traders purchase or from artisanal miners at the mine site or at local markets. The ore is aggregated, often mixed with or from multiple sources, including some legitimate artisanal operations, and sold to buying houses, local trading companies that accumulate ore and sell in larger volumes. From the buying houses, the material typically moves to processing facilities in the DRC or in Zambia, where it is refined into cobalt hydroxide, a chemical intermediate that no longer carries the physical appearance of raw ore that can be mixed with material from various sources. The cobalt hydroxide then moves, predominantly, to China. The DRC is the largest supplier of cobalt globally, and China is the largest processor. Chinese smelters and refineries convert cobalt hydroxide into cobalt sulfate and other battery-grade compounds. These compounds are then used to manufacture battery cathode materials, which are used to make battery cells, which are assembled into battery packs, which are incorporated into smartphones, laptops, and electric vehicles sold globally. At each stage of this chain, buying house, processing facility, Chinese refinery, cathode manufacturer, battery cell maker, battery pack assembler, consumer electronics, or vehicle manufacturer, the cobalt becomes progressively harder to trace to its specific origin. By the time it is a processed chemical compound in a Chinese facility, the documentation connecting it to a specific mine, a specific set of working conditions, and a specific set of workers may have been lost or never created. The major technology and automotive companies that are the ultimate buyers of cobalt-containing products have, over the past decade, committed to supply chain due diligence requirements that are designed to address these problems. The Responsible Minerals Initiative maintains a list of audited smelters and refiners, facilities that have been assessed against standards designed to verify that their sourcing does not involve the most serious violations of human rights and safety standards. Companies that commit to using only audited facilities can make credible claims about the upper tiers of their supply chain. The limitation of these systems is that they verify the behavior of smelters and refiners, not what happens below them in the chain. A smelter may be audited and certified as compliant while still receiving material that passed through the informal DRC trading sector before arriving at its loading dock. The audit standards do not currently include requirements for the kind of mine-level traceability that will be necessary to verify origin with certainty. Blockchain-based traceability systems, proposed by several technology companies and non-governmental organizations, offer a potential solution in principle, creating a digital record of cobalt's movement from mine to end product that cannot be retroactively altered. Several pilot programs have been implemented in the DRC. The practical challenge is that a blockchain record is only as reliable as the data entered at the mine site, and entering accurate data requires either reliable human reporters or technical systems in environments that are remote, informal, and characterized by incentives that do not always align with accurate reporting. The battery technology companies that supply the electric vehicle and consumer electronics industries are working to reduce cobalt content in their battery chemistries, partly for cost reasons and partly to reduce the supply chain risk concentration in the DRC. Lithium iron phosphate batteries, which contain no cobalt, are increasingly used in applications where energy density is less critical, including utility-scale storage and some vehicle applications. Nickel-manganese cobalt chemistries with lower cobalt fractions are replacing higher cobalt chemistries in premium battery applications. Tesla, among others, has publicly stated a goal of developing high-performance batteries with reduced or zero cobalt. The trajectory is toward reduced cobalt dependence in the long run. In the medium run, the combination of growing electric vehicle adoption and the still dominant energy density advantages of cobalt-containing cathodes means that global cobalt demand is projected to continue growing significantly through the 2030s. The DRC will supply the majority of that cobalt throughout this period. The blue soil of Kolwezi does not know what it powers. The cobalt that colors it does not know whether it was mined by a multinational corporation with safety protocols and union contracts, or by a 12-year-old in an unsupported tunnel with no protective equipment. By the time that cobalt is a compound in a battery in a device sold in Tokyo or Munich or Chicago, the documentation trail that would connect the device to the tunnel has, in most cases, been lost. The demand for electric vehicles is driven partly by a desire to reduce the environmental footprint of transportation. The irony that the batteries enabling this transition are supplied, in significant part, through conditions that represent a profound environmental and human rights failure, is not lost on the organizations that have been documenting this problem for years. The distance between the consumer and the mine is the distance across which accountability disappears.